Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Decoding the Unknown. As always, I'm your host Simon. Welcome in this episode, Zombies, horror movie trope or grim reality. The format of the show, if you're new here, Ilz has written me a script. I've not read it before. We're going to explore it together, dear audience. All I know about zombies, like being real, is there's that cordyceps thing, it is the Last of Us. I've not played the game, but I've seen a few episodes of the Netflix show, Apple TV, I don't know, whatever. I liked it. My wife found it a bit scary, so we didn't end up finishing it. But yeah, zombies. Let's find out. I don't think they're real though, right? I mean, maybe there's some like weird medical condition which causes people to be like zombie-like, or they take that drug, the zombie drug that people are talking about. Let's find out. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, the world suddenly became a very small and threatening place. South Africa, that's where Ilz is from, like the rest of the world, was in lockdown. Eventually, I had to venture outside the gates of our security complex to gather supplies. And since I live in a big city, this meant going to a shop. That's when I saw something I'd never seen before and probably will never see again. An empty street, no cars, no people. Even the homeless had disappeared. Yeah, where do the homeless people go when there's lockdown? What happens to them? I'm like, it starts as a joke, but I'm like, wait, where did they go? Where did the homeless people hide? Johannesburg had never been so quiet. It looked like the opening sequence of a zombie movie. Classic horror movies are popular for a reason. Nothing quite sets the mood for a weekend like a good classic horror with corny dialogue and early special effects. Vampires, werewolves, ghouls, mummies, and zombies. See, all of these, I quite like zombie movies, but I just can't get behind vampires, werewolves, ghouls, or mummies. Like, I'm sure, I don't know what really a ghoul is, but all of those other ones I don't really enjoy. But zombies, I'm down. I don't know why. We enjoy the thrill of being scared without actually being in any real danger, since we all know that monsters aren't real. Or are they? What is a zombie? The zombie we have today is a very Americanized monster. We're not quite sure where the word zombie actually comes from. The most likely origin seems to be the Congolese word Nzambi. All right, yes, obviously. Oh, I see. Zombie. Okay. Which means the spirit of a dead person. Considering the influence West African practices had on voodoo, this makes a lot of sense, but we'll get back to voodoo later. Wait, I thought voodoo was like a Haitian thing. Isn't voodoo from Haiti, not West Africa? Or is that maybe... Oh, could be a slavery thing, right? Like, passed down through generations, and now it's like big time in Haiti. Have you ever noticed how every site suddenly knows exactly what you've been looking at? It's not creepy at all, is it? No, it's mega creepy. Oh, I guess that's supposed to be sarcasm in the ad read, but yeah, no, it's really weird. You look at something one time, someone sends you one link, and then you get followed. I got followed around the internet. I bought a friend of mine, as a joke, a really, really expensive spinning top. Just as a joke. I think he sent it to me, and he was like, dude, have you seen this? Someone is selling a spinning top for like $100. And I'm like, that's insane. And so I bought him one as a gift, just because, I don't know, I thought it was funny. It's like 5 years later, and still I'll sometimes see adverts for that, and I'm like, how? How do you know? Well, today's sponsor, Surfshark, stops all of that shit. It's a VPN that keeps your browsing private, your data encrypted, and your digital footprint basically invisible. You can change your virtual location to unlock content, block trackers, even avoid price discrimination on booking flights or hotels. I literally experienced this the other day. I was looking at booking a holiday, and then I came back and I was like, aren't I booking the exact same thing? And it was like, it wasn't just a little, oh no, it was a flight. It was a flight for a holiday. It wasn't even just a holiday, it was a flight. And it was like double the price that it was previously. And I'm like, that cannot be right. Fired up Surfshark VPN. I use my go-to location, I don't know why, is Miami. And yeah, it was back to the original price. And it obviously put it in dollars, and I switched it back to my local currency, and it was still cheap. I ain't booked that shit. Surfshark.com/DTU is where you go, or you could just use the code DTU at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark totally for free. Thank you to them for sponsoring, and now back to today's episode. Unlike the vampire or the werewolf, the zombie doesn't have a clear origin. Rather, it's a bit of a mashup with all kinds of different supernatural beliefs just being thrown into the mix. The idea of contagious zombies that spread the zombie disease, usually through a bite, came from the story I Am Legend, which is actually a vampire novel, not a zombie story. Yeah, I know that. I've seen the Will Smith movie. I don't remember liking it particularly much. Maybe because it was all vampire-y rather than zombie-y. They could be killed a second time with fireballs. Okie dokie. They rarely stray too far from the tombs where they bunk, and they supposedly have superhuman strength. Like zombies, the drugger. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, but those letters do not look like they belong together in a word that can be pronounceable in English. Drugger. According to some Icelandic sagas, they can also change those they kill into drugger as well, so there is some zombie precedent here. The mummy might also have had some influence on the zombie we know and love today. Mummies are actually real, but they only started coming back to life in 1827. Mummies are usually the result of a curse, and they don't eat human flesh, but the idea of the dead rising from their graves certainly struck a chord with audiences, introducing the idea of walking corpses causing havoc and mayhem in the mainstream. Yeah, what's up with mummies? If they don't want to eat us, what's their motivation? These days, zombies, they're usually undead, the corpses of humans reanimated through a virus, a parasite, pollution, radiation, or some biological weapon. Whatever made the zombie a zombie in the first place usually has some human origin cause, and let's be honest, the most likely thing to doom the human race is the human race. Yeah, unless it's some alien parasite coming down, it's usually something someone cooked up in a lab, isn't it? The zombies hunger for human flesh, sometimes brains, because in the case of a virus or parasite, that's how the zombie passes on the eternal gift of becoming a zombie. The traditional zombies are slow but relentless, and unlike our human heroes, they don't need to sleep. In the end, they rely on their numbers, which just keep growing with every bite they take. More modern zombies are often faster, but not necessarily dead to start with, and even show glimmers of intelligence, which makes them even scarier. So it's really no surprise they became a standard horror movie addition. Yeah, I remember that there was a scale, I don't know, it's like a meme ages ago, of fast zombies and smart zombies. And then obviously fast and smart zombies are the most scary, and then dumb and slow zombies are the least, and it was had all the movies and the different zombies ranked on this on this 2-axis graph. It's quite amusing. I think the ones from 28 Days Later were the most terrifying because they're smart and fast, I think. The horror movie Trope. William Seabrook, the very problematic travel writer, journalist, occultist, and alcoholic, is often considered to be the person to officially introduce the world of zombies to the American audience and beyond in his travel book, The Magic Island, published in 1927. Travel book, huh? He's doing the classic, publish some fiction as non-fiction, it's going to make more money. It details all Seabrook's adventures into the exotic Haiti, initiation into voodoo ceremonies, and even possession by the voodoo gods. A reliable narrator this man was not. In one chapter, Seabrook regales the reader with tales of meeting actual zombies working the sugarcane fields of the Haitian American Sugar Corporation at night. Sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen. He's getting sued. He's like, no, it's fact. I saw the zombies working on the Haitian American Sugar Corporation's fields. Cease and desist, Seabrook. Cease and desist. In his description, he stated, "The eyes were the worst. They were in truth like the eyes of a dead man, not blind, but staring, unfocused, unseeing." Initially he panicked, but finally decided on a ritual explanation, which does seem a little out of character for him. The zombies weren't the raised dead, but simply ordinary, if demented human beings being forced to work in the fields. That sounds even worse. Now it sounds vaguely plausible. Haitian Sugar Corporation's coming for you, dude. Despite his somewhat tenuous grasp on reality, it was this chapter in Seabrook's book that became the inspiration for the first official feature-length zombie movie in 1932, and also maybe the inspiration of the Haitian American Sugar Corporation's lawsuits against This was called White Zombie. The title is the least problematic thing about the movie. It tells the story of two star-crossed lovers, Neil and Madeline, who are persuaded to get married on a sugar plantation in Haiti. Naturally. However, the owner of the plantation is secretly in love with the blushing bride-to-be and employs the services of a voodoo sorcerer to turn Madeline into a zombie. He finally regrets his life choices and proceeds to kill the sorcerer, releasing Madeline from his power before falling to his own death. Neil and Madeline are reunited and all's well that end well, I suppose. Spoiler alert! Oh, come on. This movie's only 93 years old. Starring everyone's favorite villain, Bela Lugosi. That was the original Dracula, right? The movie was panned by critics, but was a financial success. It introduced the concept. I saw there was that movie with, was it Ice Cube? It was it was he just plays a guy at a computer, and it's just a picture of, the whole movie's just him and his computer screen, and it got 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's terrible. But now I want to see it because it's so bad. And I know that's going to make the money. So, yeah, Critical success does not mean commercial success, and vice versa. It introduced the concept of zombies to a wide audience, but there was a distinct lack of brain eating and gore. There were some more zombie movies over the following years, but despite the movie's limited success, the zombie was nowhere near as popular as Nosferatu or Frankenstein. The zombie genre would be reinvented by George Romero, though not intentionally. In 1968, Romero would scare the pants off people with Night of the Living Dead, which completely changed the zombie trope and cemented the zombie as a vehicle for social commentary, but that's a discussion for another time. Zombie for social commentary, all right. The irony is that Romero never calls his undead creatures zombies. He knew that zombies were actually a Haitian thing. Instead, he refers to them as ghouls. It was the audience. Wait, don't they famously in that, Walking Dead, just The Walking Dead, right? Oh my God, I saw like 5 seasons of that, and then I was just like, this is too much. I can't do it anymore. It's just too much. When they ate that baby, I'm just like, this is too much. I just can't do it. I'm out, Walking Dead. You took it too far. But they never refer to them as zombies, right? Walkers. They call them walkers. I like that. Instead, he refers to them as ghouls. It was the audience who identified the creatures as zombies. The movie itself was loosely based on I Am Legend, a vampire novel, not a zombie story, so it really had no business changing the zombie genre as much as it did. Night of the Living Dead was ahead of its time. The main protagonist is a young African-American man, which had to have been a tough sell in 1960s America. According to one article, Martin Luther King was assassinated while Romero was loading the movie into the trunk of his car to take it to the distributors. I have no idea if this is true, but King was assassinated in April 1968, so it's certainly plausible. Despite the sometimes biting racial commentary, the movie was a hit. In order not to zombify our entire audience, I will wrench myself away from delivering a full-on academic review of Night of the Living Dead and simply say, go watch it for yourselves to see the birth of a genre that would eventually give us The Walking Dead and The Last of Us. While the classic zombie horror trope is the slow-moving, brain-munching monsters that most of us are familiar with, the zombie, like all things, has evolved over the years. The post-war years, the 40s and 50s, saw the Nazis making zombies, since there was nothing more evil than a Nazi zombie, and unsurprisingly, nuclear fallout and radiation were often the leading causes of raising the undead. I suppose it's like whatever society's most afraid of at that moment, right? By the 80s and 90s, the world had been exposed to some rather horrible diseases like Ebola, AIDS, and the avian flu that made all kinds of merry mayhem in China. There you go. See, it's just what's like most scary at the time. Suddenly, the zombie was the result of a virus of some kind. In the early 2000s, what causes the zombie? Mostly Al-Qaeda. Today, what causes zombies? Russians. Suddenly, the zombie was the result of a virus of some kind, and the zombies weren't necessarily dead. They were just infected. In Resident Evil, it's a man-made bioweapon, the T-virus, that escapes from a lab, and in 28 days later, it's a rage virus, which escapes from a lab, ravages the world, and finally leads to complete dystopian collapse. Clearly, research labs need to up their security protocols. The zombie also became a little faster. In 2013's World War Z, a zombie was introduced that was both fast and shows a bit more intelligence than zombies of the past. That's the most scary ones. Zombies can only be stopped by removing the head or destroying the brain, which is why beheadings became particularly popular. But then you still a zombie head just rolling around. In most zombie movies, at least one, though often more members of the surviving party will be infected and turn on the rest of the group. Fellow human survivors often become an even bigger threat than the zombies themselves, as we've seen in The Walking Dead, and there is usually at least one person who recognizes a close friend or loved one in the thronging crowd of zombies lusting for brains. A zombie story just wouldn't be a zombie story without the nicest person in town hammering on the windows trying to eat you. From zombies created by magic to zombies created by man, be it in a lab or the result of Mother Nature lashing out because humans just can't help messing with the order of things, zombies, as a horror trope, are here to stay. Yeah, I enjoy it. I enjoy those zombie movies. I'm pretty happy with that. Are they real? Well, according to doomsday preppers and zombie enthusiasts, the end times are nigh, and the zombie horde is just around the corner. Even our ancient ancestors had plans in place to deal with the undead, so the fear of zombies has been around for a long time. Keeping the dead in their graves was an important part of the ancient world. Corpses were pinned with heavy stones. Rocks were jammed into a corpse's mouth to prevent the body from being inhabited by evil spirits. Corpses were decapitated and burned to prevent the dead from coming back. And throughout Europe, corpses would be buried on their stomachs, not their backs. So should the corpse return to life, instead of digging up to haunt the living, it will dig itself deeper. Records from the Bramberg witch trials in the 1600s claim that witches were dancing with reanimated corpses at their witchy ceremonies. I can't blame them, a good dance partner's hard to find. The Epic of Gilgamesh and even the Christian Bible has tales of zombies. Really now? If you don't believe me, go and read Lazarus or the Gospel of Matthew. Of course, the most famous resurrection is Jesus. Oh my god, yeah, Jesus was a zombie. That's so obvious. I mean, I never thought about that, but yeah, he's a zombie. Conspiracy theorists are also quick to point out that the US military apparently takes the zombie threat as seriously as our ancient ancestors. A document called CONOP 8888 outlines a plan for a large-scale operation dealing with catastrophes such as zombie apocalypse. The plan is very detailed. From zombies created by black magic, radiation, or infection to vegetarian zombies that pose no risk to human life, all possibilities are covered. Of course, a zombie apocalypse where the zombies only eat carrots would be a bit of an anticlimax, but at least the US military are planning for every eventuality. My understanding was this was like an inside joke, or like the military being a bit funny, right? Which is brilliant use of taxpayer money, but I mean, yeah, I get it. It's kind of entertaining. Good job, military. There are contingency plans in case zombies overrun hospitals and medical facilities, and even plans to deploy remotely controlled robots to man critical infrastructure like power stations if the zombie threat grows faster than expected. A chain of command from the president down is clearly laid out, so if someone in the chain is lost to the zombie horde, the plan won't fall apart. This is something many zombie shows could probably learn from. The Pentagon insists that it's just a training document for students using a fictional scenario since there's no chance of anyone reading it and thinking the zombie apocalypse is actually at hand. Yeah, that seems pretty fair and sensible, I get it. Either the government is greatly underestimating the imagination of conspiracy theorists, or they know something we don't. After all, according to all the movies, the military just can't be trusted. Our ancestors took precautions against the undead, and doomsday preppers are ready for the impending apocalypse with stores of food, water, guns, and enough baseball bats to start a league. However, are they waiting in vain, or are zombies actually real? This is not something we say often on this channel, but zombies aren't entirely works of fiction. Okay, so I mean, the doomsday preppers and stuff, I don't think they're just waiting for a zombie apocalypse. Most of them are probably a bit more realistic than that. They do think that the end is coming, but it'll be like, I don't know, by military takeover or whatever, and they've got to get a militia and fight back and all that stuff. Like, I don't know, I'm not a doomsday prepper. I don't have like a bunker, but I definitely think about it. Like, if everything went to shit, what would I do? And it's like, yeah, no, I got a little plan. It's for sure. I think it's irresponsible not to. A zombie in Haiti. On April the 30th, 1962, a man named Clavius Narcisse showed up at the American-directed Schweitzer Hotel in De Chapelle. He was feverish and spitting up blood, but the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. His symptoms soon worsened, and 3 days later, Narcisse was dead. The attending physicians, one of them American, signed his death certificate. Narcisse was sent to cold storage for 24 hours, and from there he was sent to his grave. And that should have been the end of the story. Oh no, he's not alive. He's still alive. Did they bury him alive? When they think, oh no, he's dead because they just don't feel his pulse or whatever. And then he digs himself out of his coffin. Oh, that is absolute nightmare fuel, being buried alive. However, in 1980, 18 years after burying her brother, Angelina Narcisse was shopping in a market in the village of Lester when she was approached by a man claiming to be her long-deceased, not to mention long-buried brother. Angela was understandably skeptical, as you would be, but the man introduced himself using a childhood nickname and knew things only a family member could know. As if reappearing 18 years after being buried is not strange enough, Clavius had an extraordinary tale to tell. He clearly remembered being in hospital and hearing himself being declared dead while his sister was sobbing next to his bed. He also remembered his funeral. He was alive, fully conscious, but unable to move or speak as his coffin was lowered into the ground. Oh my god, this would be the most... I want that thing, where they... I think... Was it back in the day, the Age of Sail or whatever, that when a sailor died, they wrapped him in his hammock and threw him overboard. But before they did, they pierced through his mouth with the needle that they were using to sew him into his hammock to make sure he was dead. And I don't think it was because they worried that he was, in a coma or whatever, but that he was pretending to be dead so he could be thrown into the water and then swim away to whatever tropical island they were passing and then go on sipping coconuts and living happily for the rest of his life rather than being beaten with the cat o' nine tails consistently. He recalled the sound of clumps of dirt hitting the coffin and felt like he was floating over his grave. He even had a scar on his right cheek caused by a nail driven through the casket. Wait, what? Why would... What? However, he didn't remain buried for long. That night, he was raised from his grave by a voodoo priest, a bakor, beaten with a sisal whip and carried off to a sugar plantation where he, along with other zombie slaves, were made to work. Let me guess, it's that same company. Cease and desist! It was only after the zombie master died that Clavius, along with some other zombies, were able to escape and return home. It's unclear what happened to the other zombie slaves that worked the plantation with him, but around the time that Clavius reappeared, 2 women turned up in another village claiming to be zombies, and in northern Haiti, locals came across a group of zombies wandering aimlessly in the fields, so perhaps there is some truth to Clavius' tale after all. There's a lack of eating brains and violence in this tale, but the story of Clavius, while best documented, is far from unique. I don't believe this. In 1937, African-American writer and anthropologist Zora Neale Hurston traveled to Haiti to study voodoo. She spent several months in Haiti, even training to be a voodoo priest. Or priestess? She? Right? It was a woman? Yeah. However, she became increasingly more spooked by her experience, and in her travel book, Tell My Horse, published in 1938, she claimed that zombies were very real. In a 1943 interview, she said that a zombie is supposed to be the living dead, people who die and are resurrected, but without their souls. They can take orders and do what their master says and never get tired. While in Haiti, she even got the chance to meet an actual zombie and do something no one had done before, photograph a zombie. And no one's done it since zombies aren't real. The next zombie in question was Felicia Felix Mentor, a woman who supposedly died at the age of 29 in 1907, only to be spotted wandering by the side of a road by relatives 30 years later, who finally decided to check her into a mental hospital. Experts seem to think that Felix Mentor most likely suffered from some sort of mental illness, though whether this was a result of zombification or not, we'll never know. Tell you what, I know it's not. It's something else. Because I don't think, last time I checked, that zombification was in the DSM. However, soon after this meeting, Hurston left Haiti, believing that secret voodoo societies were intent on poisoning her. We can't have a decoding script without at least one secret society. While it may not make international headlines, according to some sources, hundreds, sometimes close to 1,000 zombies are reported to local Haitian authorities every year. Hundreds of zombies, secret voodoo societies. I mean, what is going on in Haiti? Well, in order to understand the zombie phenomenon in Haiti, we need to go back even further to the days when Haiti was a French colony, Saint-Domingue, in the 17th and 18th centuries. It was by far the most profitable French colony, producing 40% of the world's sugar and 60% of the coffee consumed in Europe. Good God, I didn't even realize there was Haitian coffee. Do we still drink it? Of course, these profits weren't due to ethical business practices. No. By the late 1700s, Saint-Domingue was importing more slaves annually than its entire white population, and at the peak of slavery, over 90% of the island's inhabitants were enslaved, forced to work in sugarcane fields. People in the past. I know, it's like, oh, well, Simon, if you were taken back into the past, you'd also be a And it's like, well, I mean, probably, but it's still really shocking, and I like to think that I wouldn't be. Sorry, I realised I dumped a on the desk. I'll just move these keys and sunglasses off screen a little bit. There we go, that's better. Audio listeners are like, what's going on? Sorry. The conditions were brutal. At least half, if not more, of the slaves who arrived, mainly from West Africa, were worked to death within a few years, which meant that even more had to be imported. Jesus Christ, like a disposable commodity. Again, people of the past, what the man. The slaves believed that dying would release them from slavery, and well, they're not wrong, and in death they would return back home to Africa. It was in the afterlife that they would finally be free. Living under such brutal conditions must have been terrifying, but there was one belief that the slaves feared above all else, the idea that even in death you would not be free. Even in death your body would remain a slave. West African traditions mixed with the native West Indian Taino beliefs and Catholicism, as the slaves were forced to convert to the faith that enslaved them, to create Vodou, most commonly known as voodoo, a deeply misunderstood religion. The fears of an enslaved nation took shape in the form of the zombie, a person raised from the dead by a voodoo sorcerer known as a bakor, forced to work as a slave, never getting their freedom and never returning home. Despite having gained their freedom and independence from France in 1804 and finally kicking out the Americans in 1934, corruption was still rife in Haiti, with politicians using the threat of zombification to intimidate voters and suppress protests. The National Guard ran the country through much of the 20th century, relying on violence and terror. Under the rule of Dr. Francois Papadog-Duvalier, who was named president for life in 1964, the feared secret police patrolled the streets, behaving with such complete immorality and blind obedience that they were sometimes assumed to be zombies under the dictator's control. Haiti is just the most, I don't know if it's politically incorrect or whatever, but it's just fucked up. It's its whole history. It's horrific slavery for ages, dictatorship, and now it's completely ruined by gangs. It's just not a functional society. And I mean, it's just the regular people trying to live their lives in misery. I don't like it. To a once enslaved people, the idea that even death could not free you was terrifying. However, even today, it's not the zombie that is feared. The zombie is a pitiful thing, deserving of sympathy. The true terror is becoming a zombie, and the big bad is the zombie master. Around the same time, our accredited zombie, Clairvius Narcisse, returned from the dead in the 1980s. Dr. Lamarck Dion, a Haitian-born but Canadian-trained psychiatrist, had been studying reports of zombies for years. He was convinced that they were real. In the 1980s, huh? But, I mean, it depends what he means by real. If they're the literal undead who've come back from the dead and want to feed on brains and can only be killed by massive head trauma, no. But if they're zombified somehow, I mean, it's just, yes. He was convinced they were real, but proof was hard to find, and he couldn't come up with a scientific explanation for the phenomenon. He theorized that the victims were only made to look dead with some kind of drug, since raising someone from the dead is impossible, but the exact details eluded him. Okay, good, he's a scientist. He's a psychiatrist. I mean, he's going at this from the way I would go at this. It's well, okay, let's try and explain it with science, rather than voodoo. However, the case of Narcisse finally provided him with strong enough evidence that there was something going on to request assistance from colleagues all the way up in New York City. The potential of a drug that could induce this kind of state could also have all sorts of magical medical applications. So a group was formed to raise the necessary funds, and an ethnobiologist, Wade Davies, a 28-year-old Canadian working on his doctoral degree in biology, was chosen to go to Haiti and investigate zombies, and more importantly, how zombies were made. Davis arrived in Haiti with a list of contacts, among them one Marcel Pierre, a voodoo sorcerer who was apparently willing to help an ethnobiologist out. Davies accompanied his friendly neighborhood voodoo sorcerer to collect ingredients and watch him make the powder, grinding together the dried ingredients with a mortar and pestle. However, Davis knew his plants, and he thought none of the ingredients used in the powder could produce the powerful effects associated with zombification, and he was right. The first batch was a complete dud. To absolutely nobody's surprise, the wily islander had been a naive tourist and taken him for a ride, since I assume the powder wasn't free. Yeah, but also he's it's the research budget, isn't it? I'm just having a nice time on Haiti. Where's the beach? About 3 weeks later, Davis returned to Pierre, challenging him and calling him a charlatan. Now, I'm not sure whether it was bravery or stupidity, but calling a voodoo sorcerer a charlatan takes guts. No, it doesn't. Whoever this was, any voodoo sorcerers out there, I think you're charlatans. I think you're filled with nonsense, and curse away, you little bitches. Because that's how much I don't believe in this. I will go ahead. Just absolutely, you're the worst shit you can imagine. Go ahead. See that? Guts. Or just a complete disbelief in any of this nonsense. There are some beliefs you don't mess with, and voodoo is at the top of the list. That... voodoo, it's nonsense. Pierre, somewhat miffed, gave the annoying Canadian a second vial, which turned out to be the real deal, and after some bravado on the side of Davis, agreed to show the ethnobiologist how the powder was made. The final product looked like dry black dirt and consisted of parts of toads, sea worms, lizards, tarantulas, fish, and human bones obtained from a child's grave during a nighttime trip to a cemetery. Not exactly standard scientific practice, but when in Rome, or Haiti, I guess. Now, there are a number of ways to administer this powder in order to get the zombification process underway. There's only going to be one thing in there that's actually the active ingredient, right? I feel like it could be toads. Maybe tarantulas. Tarantulas have poison. Lizards have poison. Human bones, no. Fish, probably not. Sea worms, probably not. Not exactly... The poison can be rubbed into the victim's skin, ingested with food, or even injected directly into the bloodstream using a blow dart for the most dexterous parkour, and within hours the victim will feel nauseated and have difficulty breathing. This is followed by a pins and needles sensation in the arms and legs, slowly progressing throughout the whole body. Eventually, the subject will be paralyzed, and his or her lips will turn blue due to a lack of oxygen. Sometimes within a matter of hours, the future zombie's metabolism is lowered to the point where the victims appear dead. Of course, they aren't actually dead, they're still fully aware, but due to the paralysis, they can't say anything. Once dead, the body is taken to a hospital and declared officially dead by a doctor, and the victim finds themselves in a grave shortly thereafter. Haiti is hot, and refrigerated storage facilities for the newly dead are limited, so it's best to get the dead in their graves quickly. Once the victim is in the ground, the bokor waits, sometimes for nightfall or just until all the mourners have gone to return to the grave and dig up the body. This has to happen within 8 hours, otherwise the victim will suffocate, and since Haitian zombies aren't the reanimated dead, a dead zombie is, well, dead. What is going on? Why would you go through all of this hassle? What is happening? Once the freshly turned zombie has been dug up, the bokor performs an ancient voodoo rite during which he or she traps the victim's Tibonange, the part of the soul that makes up the person and who they are, in whatever receptacle they have on hand, be it a mystical clay vessel or grandma's old Tupperware with mismatched lids. Tupperware with mismatched lids is the most, especially when it's almost the right size. I hate that. Voodoo is a very practical religion. Unlike Tupperware, this container is then wrapped in a piece of the victim's clothing or some other personal possession and hidden in a secret place only known to the bokor. After a day or two, the bokor feeds the newly zombified victim a hallucinogenic mixture, which revives the victim but keeps the zombie in a submissive and confused state. The victim can't speak, has no memory, and just isn't the person he or she used to be. All of this makes the zombie easy to control, so the enslaved zombie is sent to work as a farm laborer or construction worker. Wait, why go through all the... Just give them the drug and then wait. Why does it have to be buried and shit? Why are you making this so elaborate? The zombies remain under the control of the bokor that created them until the bokor dies. Well, holy shit. How many of these are you creating? Because someone's going to come and kill you. You should definitely be like, unless the bokor is murdered, in which case no freedom ever. No murdering me, all right? Only then are they released from their enslavement and free to go home to their village or return to their grave. You know, whatever works. The recipe for this zombie-making potion is not exact. It's more of an art form than a science, and different sorcerers will have different recipes, meaning different poisons will contain different ingredients, and the final result isn't guaranteed. Given that this is like a paralytic, it seems incredibly potent. Surely just making it a little bit wrong is either going to result in no zombie or a very dead person. Instead of just paralyzing the victim, the powder could just as easily kill them. Yeah, obviously. Sometimes the poison works as advertised, but the sorcerer can't get the zombie out of his or her grave fast enough, leading to suffocation or severe brain damage at the very least. However, Davis concluded that the powder must work often enough that zombies aren't just a figment of the Haitian nightmare. This is like, I don't even like to think about it, but can you imagine just being paralyzed, but you're completely aware of what's going on? Someone buries you and then you just slowly suffocate? Hell. Davis's original hypothesis was that the powder most likely contained zombies cucumber, or datura, a powerful psychoactive plant found in West Africa and other tropical areas. However, while datura could create a stupor in a large enough dose, it could not mimic death. There really aren't a whole lot of compounds that can do that. However, one of the ingredients Pierre included in the second powder was a dried fish, a species of puffer or blowfish. I would have thought it would be the toad, which is found all across the world. The fish contains tetrodotoxin, one of the most powerful non-protein poisons known to man. Bizarrely enough, I just made a video about pufferfish poison. Not on this channel, on Into the Shadows. There's another channel I do. Check it out if you want to. It showed up as an ingredient in practically every sample of zombie powder that Davis acquired. Pufferfish poisoning is a little more common than you might think, and it's a speciality in Japan where only licensed chefs are allowed to prepare. This is what the whole video is about. And even then, people can still die. Several dozen people die every year. Wait, I think in the video saying that was it used to be that way, but they've got the deaths down quite a lot now. So it's not a few dozen dying anymore, but they did. Apparently, there's no known antidote for pufferfish poisoning. You either get better by yourself or you die. More than 60% of those suffering pufferfish poison don't make it, but accounts from people who do sound a bit like zombification. Victims are conscious, but they can't speak or move. One man who died from eating pufferfish miraculously recovered in the morgue 7 days later. Be like, I'm so hungry. I'm so hungry. Let me out of here. I need some food. It's really cold. That must have been quite a shock to the morgue employees. Another man was already nailed into his coffin when he managed to revive. Talk about a close call. A lot of this sounds very similar to what Narcisse, our real-life zombie back in Haiti, described. Did you know, fun side note, back in the day, people were so worried about getting buried alive that in a coffin they would have a little thing you could pull that went to the surface and would ring a bell. So like if you're in your coffin and you'd wake up and like, oh my God, you could pull this string and it rings a bell on the surface. People can come and dig you up. And there was like a breathing thing. So you could breathe down there. And then I guess after a while they took the bell away because you're definitely dead. While tetrodotoxin can certainly start the ball rolling, it's not strong enough to turn someone into a zombie permanently. If that was the case, the zombie apocalypse would have started in Japan some time ago. The islanders believe that it's the power of the priest who raised the zombie which keeps the zombie in thrall. However, Davis theorized there was a combination of the belief in zombies, the pure terror and psychological trauma of the zombification process, which includes being buried alive, along with more drugs given to the zombie once he or she is resurrected from the grave, that keeps these zombies in their trance-like state. This might be where the datura comes in. Feeding zombies datura paste made with sweet potato and cane sugar, or food laced with datura, probably just intensifies their disorientation. Of course, brain damage, detox, and deprivation, if you can't get to your zombie quickly enough, would also affect the victim. However, a part of this process is also the victim just returned from the grave, reconstructing their own identity as that of a zombie. Yeah, the power of belief is really strong. Now, to be clear, we're not victim blaming here. Basically, people believe they are zombies since they know the process they just went through create zombies. A person who doesn't believe in zombies would be a lot harder to control. Reconstructing yes. You'd be like, you're a zombie. No, I'm not. I was just in a weird coma for a few days and then you buried me, you psycho. Take that weird sweet potato paste away. Reconstructing your own identity according to cultural beliefs happens everywhere. This is just an extreme example. While many voodoo practitioners believe that zombification is possible, they are actually in the minority, contrary to what movies might have you believe. Most voodoo practitioners don't believe in zombies. People who had been identified as zombies like Narcisse were usually considered to be criminals by their communities. Narcisse was found guilty by a rural court for selling land that he didn't own. This was when Davis discovered the secret societies, many of them proudly tracing their origins back to bands of escaped slaves who revolted against the French in the late 1700s. These secret societies meet in secret. It's in the name, and do their own form of rural policing, using the threat of zombification as a way to maintain order. The practice of zombification as punishment is used to punish those guilty of rape or theft of land that somehow manage to avoid punishment by the authorities. How do you steal land? Like, you'd be like, that's mine now. You'd be like, no, it's not. It's not like something you could take. Although I guess tell that to all of the native people throughout history. A British man saying, you can't steal land. Get off my garden. This sacred burial grounds make a brilliant rose garden. Thank you so much. Get out of here. Stealing land in Haiti is a serious crime since land is considered sacred. Being turned into a zombie is the worst possible punishment. You lose your freedom, free will, and independence, the very things valued above all else due to Haiti's history of slavery. Of course, you don't necessarily need to be found guilty of a crime. A morally challenged Bakor employed by your enemies would happily zombify you if the price is right. If you're unlucky enough to believe in zombies and get dosed with a zombie poison, you're right out of luck. There doesn't seem to be an antidote for zombie poison, but much like the various priests and sorcerers have their own concoctions to turn someone into a zombie, some voodoo practitioners believe that another cocktail, of which the recipe again changes from priest to priest, can revive a zombie. The common ingredient is salt. The salt is considered a purifying agent, which will allow the zombie to speak, returning it from its subhuman state. Well, that's very easy. Just get some salt. You get salt anywhere. It's even believed that salt may act like a homing beacon, leading the zombie back to its grave and final rest. If you're the Bakor who made them, you want to make yourself scarce should your zombies get their hands on some salt, as they will turn against their creator violently. However, as long as their diets remain bland, they're generally not aggressive or dangerous, unlike the Hollywood zombies. Davis's research seems sound at first. Some of the samples of zombie powder, which he brought back to America, also had dramatic results when used on the skin of rats and a rhesus monkey. Poor animals. The subjects first became lethargic and then paralyzed, but eventually they fully recovered. However, there was some criticism from academic circles regarding his methods. Some felt that his approach was more sensational than scientific. There were also some ethical concerns, considering that Davis observed a grave desecration when accompanying his helpful voodoo sorcerer when shopping for ingredients. While this certainly seems morally questionable, it's morally questionable, but does it make the science any less wrong? No. I think the prime directive applies here. That is how zombies are made. You can't really expect a Bokor to make a zombie powder following another culture's code of ethics. Some scientists, nice Star Trek reference there, by the way. Some scientists also claimed that the powder samples contained little to no tetrodotoxin. However, since each Bokor uses his or her recipe to make the poison, and the powders probably fail more often than they succeed, this would actually make sense. Several studies of zombies also revealed that most zombies were people suffering from mental illness and cases of mistaken identity by bereaved relatives. Not to mention that if there were plantations filled with zombie slaves doing all the work, no one has yet managed to stumble across them, suggesting that zombification probably doesn't have to happen that often, if at all. Perhaps the threat of zombification is all that's needed. While all of this is true, none of it invalidates Davis's research. He never said there were legions of zombies running around Haiti. No, he just went down there to check it out. Considering that the powders are hit and miss depending on the Bokor making it and the ingredients used, it's far more likely that most people die in attempts at zombification. Whether Western scientists believe in zombies or not, the people of Haiti do. Making a zombie is against the law. Oh, it's very specific. According to 2014's Doc of the Dead, a documentary on zombies and the zombie genre, zombie making is such a problem in Haiti that the 1883 Haitian Criminal Code even outlawed the making of zombies. Now, in fairness, the Penal Code doesn't use the word zombie and doesn't explicitly outlaw the creation of zombies. However, it does state that poisoning someone with a substance that will result in a prolonged state of lethargy, regardless of how the poison was administered, would be considered attempted murder. If someone is buried in this state and dies, it becomes murder. I don't feel like the other countries have that different, though. If you poison someone and bury them and they die, that's murder, my dudes. So whether or not there are zombies running around Haiti in such numbers that it needed to be outlawed, it seems that the practice of attempting to make zombies were accepted enough to make it into law. Perhaps enough people died at the hands of Bokors trying to make zombies that the government felt the need to step in. The Haitian zombie is not the brain-eating gore-fest most of us associate with the word zombie, but the Haitian zombies were first. It was the American soldiers returning home during the occupation of Haiti between 1915 and 1934 who first brought the idea of zombies home with them, and it was the Western imagination that did the rest. Bringing the dead back to life. If there's something that humans fear above all else, it's death. Books, movies, and even science have been preoccupied with the question of prolonging human life, or, should the worst happen, reanimating the dead. Your body starts going rotten real quick. I like the idea of keeping me alive as long as possible. And I don't know why. Some people find this really weird. People are like, you want to live forever? And I'll be like, well, I like the choice. And people are like, no, it's nice to be able to die. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Sounds stupid. But is it possible to bring a dead body back to life? Well, let's just say Mary Shelley might have been on the right track. No, she wasn't. No one's being brought back to life. There's no Frankenstein. It's not real. Experiments to bring the dead back to life started as early as the 1800s with physicist Giovanni Aldini. Sorry, whenever I see the name Giovanni, I just want to do an Italian accent. You just do. Who believed the answer to the great mystery could be found in electricity. He worked for years to prove that his uncle, Luigi Galvani, dude, this is the most Italian family. Luigi, Giovanni, Mario, was onto something with his theory on galvanism, the idea that electricity flowed through the brain to supply the body with the vital force it needed to stay alive. Interesting theory. The goal was to prove that electricity could even be used to revive the dead. His experiments started on animals, of course. He would hook up the deceased corpse to a powerful battery, and the shocks would convulse the corpses as if they were alive. He did some spectacular public demonstrations, but just playing with electricity and dead animals wasn't enough for him. Uh-oh. What's he gonna do? He's gonna get some dead bodies and do it. No! In January 1803, George Foster was executed at Newgate Prison for the murder of his wife and daughter. After hanging in temperatures 2 below freezing for 2 hours, the perfectly chilled corpse was quickly carted off to London's Royal College of Surgeons for a most spectacular spectacle in the Anatomy Theatre. The corpse was hooked up to the battery, and the electricity was used to stimulate the corpse's nerves and muscles. Unfortunately for Foster, Aldini's experiment was not a success. Spoiler alert! Can you imagine who it turned out? Oh no, that was the first time someone was brought back to life, and since then we haven't figured it out. The corpse convulsed, his jaw quivered, and his left eye opened, which must have caused quite a stir, but Foster remained oh so very dead, not a zombie in sight. Aldini may not have reanimated a corpse, but he probably was part of Mary Shelley's inspiration for her classic creation Frankenstein, which, since this apparently needs to be said, is not the first zombie book. It is a lot of firsts, but it is not the first zombie story. Following Aldini, there have been a lot of experiments on animals, which I have no intention of describing in any detail, since most of the experiments were deeply disturbing. Probably the best known of these might be the work of Sergei Honenko, a graduate from Moscow University Medical School in 1914, who used, the guy swapped the dogs' heads around, who used 2 decapitated dogs' heads to illustrate his heart-lung machine in 1925. I mean, I know this is horrific and stuff, but like the development of the heart-lung machine is really important. And people will hate me for saying this. It's like, is it okay that some dogs got sacrificed so we have heart-lung machines? I mean, I can see my subscribers dropping right now, but in my opinion, yes. Oh, yes. Yes. I'm sorry. It doesn't need to be weird, but it did need to be done. Using this machine, he could keep the heads alive for about 100 minutes. He eventually got more funding, refining his experiments, and by 1928, rumors were rife on American campuses that the Russians were reanimating the dead and making zombies. They weren't entirely wrong. In 1929, a fellow Russian scientist who had experimented on all manner of creatures for years decided to try and reanimate a human corpse. 1929, dude! And I know people would still be trying to do this today, but it just seems like once the body has started to decompose, that's it, dude. Like, if you're getting a little smelly, you're not going to get unsmelly somehow. After pumping the body full of a cocktail containing all kinds of drugs, the heart actually heaved rather violently, and a wet choking sound erupted from the patient's throat, sending all the assistants fleeing in terror. The two... It shouldn't be funny, but it's like... This would be really intense to see. The 2 scientists in charge actually managed to keep the heart beating for around 20 minutes before it stopped for a final time. In another experiment in 1934, the corpse of a suicide victim was used and the man actually opened his eyes. The reanimation only lasted for 2 minutes because the doctors, suddenly realizing that just because you could do something doesn't mean you should, quickly ended the experiment. Wait, so how long were these people dead? Because I think these are just reactions, where you twitch and stuff after you're dead. There's a word for this, which is super obvious that I'm just totally blanking on. It seems that someone realized that this human experimentation was probably a bad idea because future experiments in reanimation would once again be carried out on dogs, but you can go and read about those in your own time. Suffice to say, while I'm not usually rooting for the zombie team, in this case, if the dogs did come back as zombies and ate their creators' brains, I probably would give the zombie dogs some space to work before changing their undead state to a more permanent state of rest. I don't know, I think these... God. I like dogs plenty, but also I value science. Is it okay that we test on animals? Yes! Until we've got something better, we have to. Otherwise, we'll never have any nice things. And by nice things, I mean medically important advances that are probably keeping you alive, depending on your age. You took drugs at some point, right? Guess where those were tested. You want to really, be good? Don't take any drugs. Don't use any products. I mean... The whole of science is based on testing shit on animals, or biology, medicine, sorry. However, you don't always need a mad scientist on standby. Sometimes people just come back to life after dying. It happens often enough that medicine even has a term for it, the Lazarus phenomenon. In 2011, Kelly Dwyer, age 46, fell into a pond while hiking in New Hampshire. Her heart stopped before the paramedics could reach her, and her body temperature dropped to around 15 degrees Celsius. She'd been dead for around 5 hours when doctors finally decided to switch off life support, but instead of signing a death certificate, Dwyer's heart spontaneously started beating again, and she fully recovered in 2 weeks. As far as I know, she's not craving brains, but it seems that the dead coming back to life is not impossible. Well, this really depends on how you define... Whoops-a-daisy, on how you define death. All right, let's get a definition for death, shall we? Because I'm going to bet it's the irreversible cessation of all bodily functions. Death definition. The actual fact of dying or being killed. Well, brilliant. Thank you. Well done, dictionary. That's really useful. Okay, there we go. From Merriam-Webster, the irreversible cessation of all vital functions. God, even the exact words I used, especially as indicated by permanent stoppage of the heart, respiration, and brain activity. So irreversible cessation, permanent stoppage. Even if it's been 5 hours, it's not permanent, is it? So they didn't die. They were just, I don't know, their heart stopped. They're not dead, clearly, because they started beating again. Around 2019, a team from Yale University experimented with reanimating pigs' brains by pumping preserving agents and drugs into the dead brain, specifically targeting the neural pathways that would have been damaged by lack of oxygen. The team managed to restore some cellular activity in the brains for a few hours after the animals had died in a slaughterhouse. Oh my god. I do remember this, and I just remember thinking like, wait, so this pig's been killed in a slaughterhouse. They've taken its brain, which is essentially off, and then they've zapped it a little bit to like make it think some things. So that pig's just going to be just a consciousness, or like whatever pigs have in a lab, just being like, fuck is my body. And then death, permanent. That's fucked up science. I so want to defend everything that science does to animals, but that is so fucked up. That is way more fucked up than the dog heads. That is way fucked up than the dog heads. Because you're like just the brain in the jar, which is terrifying. The result was that the brain started displaying signs of metabolic activity and cellular functions. Oh, okay, well, that's not the brain being awake, is it? Just like a living brain. But it wasn't alive or conscious. There we go. There's not enough going on upstairs for there to be consciousness. And in this case, thank God, because that would be horrific. However, it certainly wasn't entirely dead either. Zombie pigs, I mean, that's where it starts. Of course, this raises all kinds of questions about the nature of being alive and brain dead, as if that wasn't a tricky enough area, and there are certainly some promising medical applications to this. The team has since moved on to study donated human brains, but they have to be very careful. Restoring a human brain to consciousness would be ethically problematic, to say the least. No one wants to wake up in a jar. Yeah. We have no way of knowing whether any of these reanimated humans would have been Frankenstein or The Walking Dead, but I'm fairly sure it's just a matter of time until science finally reaches the point where death is no longer final. Hopefully, we all don't wake up with a lust for human brains. No, I don't think so. I think they'll figure it out, and we'll just wake up and be like, oh wow, that was intense. On with life. Zombies in nature. Of course, you don't need to be a mad scientist or get a plane ticket to Haiti to see zombies. You can just walk out of your front door. There could very well be a zombie living in your garden. Oh, we're talking about these ants. The cordyceps ones from The Last of Us. These zombies are not undead, they're just at the mercy of parasites. Most parasites eventually kill their landlords, but it's the parasites that influence the behavior of their hosts, manipulating them into dying in a specific place or at a specific time. It's all really rather creepy. There are more zombies in nature than you might think, so I will present my personal favourites to you to give you some sleepless nights, or make you reconsider a career in entomology. Is that like the study of bugs? Firstly, there is the jewel wasp and the cockroach. Oh god, I don't like either. Like, jewel wasp sounds horrible, and so obviously does the cockroach, but I get the feeling the jewel wasp is the bad guy in this one, because I don't remember cockroaches being parasites. The jewel wasp picks a roach that meets their specifications. They inject the roach with a venomous, mind-controlling cocktail, much like a wild Saturday night in most varsity towns. Then the wasp bites off one of the roach's antennae and, using the stump, walks the roach to a prepared burrow. No dragging required. Smart. Here it lays some eggs inside the roach's back and then blocks the entrance to the burrow so the roach can't get out and other predators can't get in. I don't like this. Soon the eggs hatch, and the wasp larvae snack on the roach until they're big enough to go find another unfortunate roach. Oh no, I never thought I'd feel sorry for a cockroach, but this is super f***ed up, jewel wasp. What the f***'s wrong with you? Can we kill you? Can we eradicate your species? I don't like it. Another wasp species targets a specific spider native to Ecuador. The wasp stings the spider, inducing a state of temporary paralysis, during which the wasp engages in some arts and crafts and glues an egg to the spider's abdomen. Once the paralysis wears off, the spider just gets up and goes about its business as usual. Within around 14, what the f*** is wrong with wasps? I hate wasps, and I hate them even more now. Within around 7 to 14 days, the egg hatches, and the larva, still attached to the spider, drinks the spider's juices. What the fuck? What the fuck, wasps? When it's time for the larva to enter its final stage of life, it chemically induces the spider with a cocktail of its own to deviate from its normal web-building style. Spiders usually build a funnel or a burrow-type web when it's ready to molt, and the wasp baby tricks the spider into thinking it's this time. These spiders are quite social and they rarely wander away from their colonies, but under the wasp baby's evil influence, the spider will leave the colony and go off to spin a special web. After the web is complete, the larva kills and eats the spider. Did you really expect anything else? Well, I think the only thing that'd be worse is it lays its eggs inside the spider and then those little egg babies eat the spider. I mean, because that would be more fucked up, but this is also super fucked up. Wasps. And it spins its own little cocoon safely in the spider's special web where it matures. I'm a bit arachnophobic, but even I wouldn't wish that on a spider. Providing food and safety is one thing, but some parasites also need transportation. One such example is the California killifish and their parasitic flatworms. The flatworms can live inside the fish. I hate the... I know there's lots of bacteria and all sorts of shit living inside me, but I don't like it. It feels very uncomfortable. One such example is the California killifish and their flatworms. The flatworms live inside the fish, but they can't reproduce inside the fish. I guess that's kind of good news. They need birds to reproduce, so somehow they have to get from the fish to the bird. To do this, the flatworms adjust the fish's brain chemistry, basically leading the fish to engage in more risky behavior like swimming closer to the surface, rubbing against rocks, or twisting around, making them more visible to birds so the birds can get their favorite snack more easily. Once they're back inside the birds, the worms reproduce. The beautiful cycle of life continues. It's just, why is it parasite the two animals? I hate you. I hate you, whatever you were, you flatworm, you sick. Thankfully, it's unlikely that these parasites will target humans. Most of us are a little more sophisticated than your average roach and will probably notice if a wasp glues an egg onto our back. They'll be like, yo, doctor, cut that off, my dude. However, evolution is a funny thing, and it doesn't mean there's nothing in nature that targets humans. Bacteria and viruses aren't as picky. I don't like it. Don't like it. Zombie diseases. While there's no disease that turns you into a ravenous zombie, yet, there are quite a few diseases that can make you behave like a zombie, make you look like a zombie, or make you think you are a zombie. There's even a disease that's spread by eating human brains, the preferred snack of zombies everywhere. That disease is called Kiru, and it's a prion disease. And prion diseases are their own special kind of hell. Leprosy, or Hansen's disease, is a bacterial infection which has been around since biblical times. Oh, right, yeah, Jesus and the leper. Doesn't he heal the leper? Or does he heal a blind dude? Or does he cross the street and avoid the leper? No, that doesn't sound like Jesus. There's something... Lepers are definitely in the Bible and they're up to their leper shit. Maybe they're in colonies or something. Or Hansen's disease is a bacterial infection that's been around since biblical times and it can definitely make someone look a bit like a zombie. Leprosy won't make parts of the body fall off. That's just a myth. No. Even I knew this. I remember learning this in GCSE biology or whatever. That's the exams we take when we're 16 Americans. It causes you can't feel things, right? There's nerve damage. And so you're just grab a pot and it'll be really hot and it'll burn you. It'll be like, oh no, I got burned. And you won't feel it. So you don't you can burn yourself and hurt yourself more easily. And then your hands end up looking all weird. But severe nerve damage can lead victims losing their sensations in their limbs, so they don't notice injuries, which can lead to gangrene and amputation. There we go. The infection also causes skin lesions, which may make the victim look like they're literally rotting away, and nerve damage leading to numbness makes it difficult to move around, leading to the shuffling walk we often associate with zombies. The disease doesn't affect your brain, though, so while you may look the part of a zombie, you're still very much alive and human. These days it can be cured, so fear not. And interesting fact of the day, leprosy can jump from armadillos to humans, proving that bacteria can make a home just about everywhere. Yeah, bacteria are resilient little prion diseases like mad cow disease. Prion disease. If you've not heard of prion diseases, it's some horrible shit. Which you get from eating mad cows, is caused by a misfolded protein in the brain. We're not entirely sure what causes the misfolding in the first place, and thankfully, while it is contagious, it's not exactly the flu. In the 50s and 60s, a prion disease known as Kuru ran amok among a tribe in Papua New Guinea. By 1957, there were around 200 deaths per year. The disease caused an unsteady gait, changes in mood, and neurological issues, with open sores that got easily infected and complete unresponsiveness being the last stage before, you guessed it, death. This is one of those diseases where I'd be like, all right, I need to... Wasn't someone just euthanized in one of those nitrogen chambers? I'm like, yeah, I need to go in the nitrogen chamber. Because I don't want to live that death. And you know there is no exit. You know there's no hope. It's like getting rabies. It's like you're get in the nitrogen chamber and take the easy way out, because otherwise you're in for a world of misery. And if you can't do it yourself, they can't do it for you. So, yeah. This particular tribe practiced cannibalism as part of their traditional funerary rites, and as it turns out, one of the very specific circumstances needed for prions to be contagious is through eating human flesh, especially brains. Or eating flesh that just has prion disease. I mean, mad cow disease was bovine encephalopathy? Bovine spongiform encephalopathy? Deep pull on my brain right there. BSE. That sounds about right. And that was like you'd eat the meat and there would be prion proteins in there, and then they'd go into your brain and cause your proteins to misfold or something like that, right? They theorize? Is that vaguely right, science people? This practice was abolished in the 60s, and since then the problem has resolved itself. We're not here to judge anyone for their cultural practices, but I think what we'll take away from this is to make sure your meat is properly cooked to avoid mad cow, and don't eat your relatives if you want to avoid becoming a zombie. Prion diseases have no cure. Possibly the strangest disease is the one that makes you think you're a zombie. Cutard's syndrome, or walking corpse syndrome, is thankfully a very rare mental disorder, which makes those experiencing it believe that they are dead, decomposing, and even missing vital organs even though their bodies are still fully functional. It's like, oh no, my kidneys are missing. No, they're not, mate. You're having a normal piss. It's filtering fine. And you're like, no, I don't have kidneys. You do. I'll show you them on a scan. But these people just don't believe it, because the brain's incredibly complicated. The hallucination will often lead a person to withdraw from society and neglect their basic needs, like eating and bathing. Of course, this lack of self-care will lead to malnourishment, dehydration, and all manner of nasty things, eventually making their delusions a reality. Some people will even insist on going to a morgue or request an autopsy to confirm that they are in fact dead. The mortician's like, nah bro, you're good. You don't need an autopsy. I can tell from here that you're alive. However, the closest thing we have to a zombie virus is rabies. I hate rabies. Terrifying. This is a truly horrible disease with a near 100% fatality rate. And by the way, when we say near 100% fatality rate, we don't mean like, oh, it's 99% fatal. You've got a 1 in 100 chance. I think there's like 3 people who've somehow recovered from rabies, like ever. All of the people who've died. So it's like, no, it's it. That's it. You're done. If you ever want to be terrified, go watch people who have rabies on YouTube. I mistakenly did that one time. I still remember that video. Its natural host is canids like foxes, dogs, and wolves, but this virus can live inside any mammal and is transmitted through saliva. So like any good zombie virus, the most likely way you'll get infected is through a bite. Animals infected with rabies become incredibly aggressive and will often foam at the mouth. The virus can stay dormant for up to a year, and the record is 5, before becoming active and attacking the nerve cells, leading to all manner of delightful symptoms such as jerky movements, full or partial paralysis, mania, delirium, and strange and very aggressive behavior. Another fascinating one is hydrophobia, fear of water. So you can't drink. It's probably where the dehydration comes from. Did we mention that? Of course, unlike a zombie, you're not actually dead. Yet, but you will be. However, by the time the symptoms start showing, it's too late. Your time's up. The virus will kill you, usually in a couple of weeks. Don't panic though, rabies can be cured if it's treated immediately. No. Rabies can be cured if it's treated, if you're given the vaccine after exposure to rabies. If you're treating, which I believe refers to symptoms, if you're symptomatic, that's it. As soon as you show a single symptom, it's game over. As long as you get the vaccine post-exposure, within I think it's 24 hours or 48 hours or something, you can get a pre-vaccine, which extends that amount of time, then you'll be okay. But if you're symptomatic and get treated for those symptoms, there's no point. You're dead. So if you're bitten by an animal, whether it's foaming at the mouth or not, err on the side of caution and get thee to an emergency room immediately before the brain craving starts. Yeah, I remember someone I knew was bitten by a monkey in a cage in a country that had rabies, and they were like, I don't know what to do about this, should I go to the doctor? And I'm like, fuck yes. You really should. Even if the chances are low, you just should, because the risks of not doing that, and even if it's just 1%, are just death. So you should. Is a zombie outbreak possible? Oh my god, I'm glad we can move on from prions and rabies and all that horrible brains in jars. Scientifically, there's no such thing as a zombie virus, and a pandemic spread by people biting each other is not very likely. It's not a very efficient way of transmission, especially if the zombies are slow and stupid. However, with enough funding and limited ethics, I have no doubt that someone will eventually cook up something to make zombies. While a mutated rabies virus is the first thing that comes to mind, there's actually quite a few other nasty surprises that could lead us down the road to a zombie apocalypse. Toxoplasma gondii is a parasite which can live comfortably in pretty much any mammal, including mice, chimpanzees, and, oh, you guessed it, us. However, in a pinch, fish and reptiles will do. Oh my god, it can survive in, completely different different... It's not a genus, is it? What's it called? Reptiles, mammals. Genus? Is that it? Is that the big classification? I don't remember. The fact it can do mammals and reptiles, like cold-blooded and warm-blooded, is kind of impressive. However, they only reproduce inside of felines, both domestic and wild, so the parasite needs to find a way to make it back into their host of choice. In order to do this, the T. gondii influences the behavior of the host. Animals infected with this parasite often become more aggressive, less fearful of their natural predators, and engage in reckless behavior. And by the way, this can include us, importantly. Mice and rats become less afraid of cats, and even become attracted to the smell of cat urine, a smell that would normally repulse them and make them avoid a specific area. Unsurprisingly, this reckless lifestyle usually leads to the mice and chimps becoming cat and leopard snacks, which is exactly what the T. gondii wants. I don't think it's a virus. Sorry, it's a parasite, isn't it? It's a parasite? Yeah, I don't think it really wants anything. In the sense of us understanding, wants. It's just doing its thing. And here's the scary bit. Toxoplasma gondii has infected an estimated 1 billion people, according to a 2020 research paper. Most people are asymptomatic, however, infection can be deadly for infants and people with a weak immune system. If the parasite makes it all the way to your brain, it can lead to hallucinations or even psychotic symptoms. Some studies also suggest that humans infected with this parasite sometimes become more aggressive, much like those rats who go looking for a fight and lose. There are also studies suggesting that it can change an infected person's behavior, leading them to take more risks or become more selfish. Of course, risky and selfish behavior, as seen during the COVID pandemic, kind of describes half the population already. But that's probably just coincidence. Considering that human ancestors were most likely a part of the food source for big cats like saber-toothed tigers and the like. Oh yeah, there was a time where it's like, oh, we were prey. Now it's like, you. We got all the shit we need. You're in a cage. I don't know, they'll still sometimes eat us, but we dominate, dude. We dominate. Some research suggests that T. gondii has been hitching a ride in humans for millions of years. Despite spending all of this quality time with us, the parasite has not turned us into complete zombies just yet. However, there are a lot of similarities between humans and rats on a cellular level, so in theory, it would only require a bit of evolution on the side of T. gondii to manipulate people into behaving in a way most advantageous to the parasite, for example, making us feed, protect, and clean up after the parasite's host of choice. That's why we love cats. We're all infected with this parasite. I do like cats. Maybe I got this parasite in my brain right now, making me want to go, I don't know, how is it again? Getting the cats? Does the cat eat my Like, what happens? Spit in the cat's eyes? I don't have that desire. Well, I suppose it might be affecting a few people, but at least it's not affecting our fear response. Enclosures in zoos and getting out of our cars in southern African nature reserves tend to get us eaten by lions. In the popular PC video game and TV show, The Last of Us, the zombie apocalypse is started by a parasitic fungus called Ophiocordicep unilateralis, which takes over the human body and spreads infection through fungal spores. And I've got bad and good news. The bad news is that this is a real thing. There are more than 750 different species of cordyceps out there. The good news is that this fungus targets insects, and each of the 750 different species of cordyceps targets a specific species of insect. They are particularly fond of carpenter ants. Once the fungus infects an ant, it will compel the ant to leave the colony and start climbing a tree to get to higher ground, usually following light. Once the ant reaches the desired spot, it will bite down on a leaf or a stick and die. The fungus will erupt from the ant's head and gleefully rain down spores on anything that moves below. If those things happen to be carpenter ants, all the better. Yeah, and I mean, you must have seen this at this point, but that thing that grows out of their head is like this long, stalky thing. It's creepy as dude. And I apologize to whoever's editing this video because I know there's a lot of swearing that you're no doubt ducking out. But yeah, I don't know. This is just, I don't like it. If The Last of Us has been giving you sleepless nights, well, rest easy. Ophiocordicep unilateralis can't infect humans. For that matter, it can't even properly infect a different species of ant. it's carpenter ant, or nothing. It's also unlikely that it will suddenly evolve enough to jump species and infect humans. We are far more complicated than ants, and the human body temperature is simply too high. Fungi need lower temperatures to thrive. It would take millions of years of evolution for this fungus to become a threat to humans, and by then I'm pretty sure we would have destroyed ourselves in a lot of horrifically creative ways. Yeah, but can't some mad scientists go and fix this thing? So it's off to humans we go. However, I like sandwiches. So now I've got some bad news again. This specific fungus may not be a danger in the foreseeable future, but fungi can develop thermotolerance, so basically a resistance to higher temperatures, meaning our high body temperature won't save us. Along with fungi slowly adapting to reproduce at higher temperatures, human body temperature has slowly been falling since the 19th century, making us even more acceptable for a family of fungi looking for a safer neighborhood. I had no idea that our body temperature has been dropping. That's fascinating. I wonder why. In fact, some fungi, like Candida auris, have already done so and thrive on higher temperatures. The fungus has been reported in more than 30 countries and showed up a little out of nowhere. It also spread from person to person, which is kind of new for a fungus. They don't usually do that. Candida auris can cause severe infections, but doesn't change the patient's behavior or manipulates the patient's mind in any way. Yeah, but what if we mashed them all together? What if we mashed this one with that cordyceps one? Into some mad scientist doing this. He stops swapping dogs' heads and he's like, yeah, let's make a fungus. It's not a zombie-making fungus yet, but it certainly suggests that the kind of fungal infection we see in The Last of Us is not impossible. One of the factors that could be at play to explain the sudden arrival of Candida auris is global warming. However, fungi is not our only problem when it comes to global warming. In 2014, researchers discovered a most fascinating virus, the so-called giant virus. Around 30,000 years old, it was discovered in the Siberian permafrost and is around 30,000 years old. It's called a giant virus because it's clearly visible under a microscope, which is like a regular-ass microscope. Its size and complexity make it particularly dangerous, which makes me wonder why they didn't just leave it in the ice. Have none of these researchers even seen the thing? Luckily, the virus only infected amoebas, not people, but there is the possibility of more dangerous viruses lurking in the world's ice, and climate change could lead to these viruses resurfacing and coming back to life. Uh-oh. We really need to look into this global warming thing. I laugh, but it's oh shit. Being hot and a zombie doesn't sound like a good time to me. Finally, if the parasites, fungi, or viruses don't get you, you can just inflict the horrors of being a zombie on yourself. There's already a zombie outbreak of sorts in many major cities across the world, thanks to an assortment of designer drugs. I think I made a video about one of these on my other channel, Into the Shadows. I think it's called Flacker, is the zombie drug. It just makes you Ugh. Xylazine, also known as trank dope, or the zombie drug. Okay, that was it, sorry. We did another episode about another drug called Flacker then. It was originally developed as an analgesic and sedative for animals in veterinary medicine and is not safe for human consumption. When has that ever stopped us? Isn't ketamine like a horse tranquilizer that people just yes, K, special K? However, it didn't take long for humans to start using, or rather abusing, medication formulated for our furry friends. Use is often described as zombies due to the effects it can have, and it can cause large open wounds like ulcers and abscesses which spread, if not treated, can start rotting. I don't like it. Don't do drugs. There are drugs. I'm not against drugs. I love drugs. But why when there are perfectly fine drugs do we have to do this shit? Why? Why? Please stop. A person stumbling about in a trance-like state with rotting limbs definitely fits the description of a zombie, thus the nickname zombie drug. Trank isn't the only one. There are a whole lot of other drugs that can do some nasty things to your body, like Flacker, there we go, and Crocodile. But we're not going into the shadows. We're decoding the unknown, so we're skipping the gory details. Suffice to say that while these drugs don't raise the dead and make them walk around the city chomping on humans, it comes pretty darn so don't do drugs, kids. Don't do these drugs. Don't do these drugs. How to survive the zombie apocalypse. The odds of a zombie apocalypse ever getting out of hand are unlikely. Zombies may be good at killing people, but humans are even better, and we've been practicing it for centuries. In the right circumstances, anything can be used as a weapon, and don't count out the military. Military stockpile in case of war, so they will have a decent amount of machine guns, bullets for machine guns, tanks fuel for the tanks, and soldiers to man them, planes and bombs ready to wipe out the zombie menace before it spreads. And they won't be going it alone. Mother Nature is probably going to be our biggest ally against zombies. Extreme temperatures, bacteria, and predators are going to make short work of stumbling corpses. For that matter, you don't even have to kill a zombie if you're a pacifist. Just shoot out the legs. Once they're immobile, they're no longer a threat, and nature can take its course. I've seen the movies. They'll just drag themselves along the ground with their arms. If you take off their arms, they'll use their jaw. It'll be like, just like pulling themselves along the pavement. Zombies. I really want to go watch a zombie movie now, though. Maybe I'll watch a zombie movie tonight. However, if by some disaster you find yourself in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, we have a whole load of zombie movies to give you some tips on how to survive. Firstly, don't panic. Immediately get away from the zombies. Zombies are usually slow, so odds are that you'll probably be faster than them. Retreat to a shopping mall, retail store, or pub, preferably a familiar one, so you know where the exits are and you have access to food, water, flashlights, and emergency radio and weapons. Yeah, shopping malls are where it's at for the zombie apocalypse. Stay away from densely populated areas. The more people there are, the more zombies there are. Barricade all the entrances and stay put no matter what. Don't get surrounded, and if you do need to make a break for it, don't get yourself backed into a corner or an enclosed space. Remember that anyone bitten by a zombie will become a zombie. Just because he's your best friend, your mum, or the girl that you've had a crush on for 5 years doesn't mean that they will be the exception to the rule, so take care of that shit quickly. Mum! There's no coming back from this. It's worse than rabies. Arr! There are also some mistakes to avoid. Don't take shelter in a vehicle if you don't have the keys or the vehicle is out of gas. And remember to use a seatbelt if you intend to ram the zombies. Isn't that one of those lines from Zombieland? Always wear a seatbelt. You don't want to go flying through a windshield. Don't leave blades, cudgels, and other weapons lying around for the zombies to find. And whatever you do, don't teach the zombies how to use guns. What movie is that from? You'd think that this one was obvious, but apparently not. Speaking of weapons, don't give your only weapon, especially if it's a gun, to the most hysterical person in the party. It's not going to end well. If you retreat into a basement or cellar, see the rule about enclosed spaces. Take all of your supplies with you. You're going to be kicking yourself if you're stuck in a dark basement without a torch. As with a fire, don't take the lift. If the building is teeming with zombies, they will inevitably be waiting for you when the doors open, no matter what floor you're on. Finally, whatever you do, don't let personal feelings and arguments stand in the way of survival. You can derate the morality of your actions when you're out of danger, and unless you happen to have a therapist in your party, family baggage can be sorted out later. Conclusion. Zombies may be the newest kids on the block when it comes to horror movie classics, but they are far more adaptable and versatile than any of their fellow monsters. From brain-eating, lumbering corpses to witty love interests, the zombie is a blank canvas. It can be anything you want it to be, which is probably why zombie genre is so popular. I've never seen a vampire walk or a werewolf crawl, but... Wait, vampires don't walk? How do vampires get around? Wait, what? But I have participated in a zombie run, and honestly, it was a blast. In 2022, the Jakarta Light Rail Transit even held a zombie-themed event on the train, reminiscent of the 2016 Korean movie Train to Busan, as a way to promote public transportation. Of course, I wouldn't try that in America or South Africa. Your fake undead might become real dead real quick. Someone in America, someone who's just like super keen on guns or whatever, is like, my time has come. It's like, what are you doing? This is just an event. Just killing all the zombies. While the violent, brain-eating, shambling corpses depicted by Hollywood are not a thing, and it's highly unlikely to ever happen, zombies are very real. True, none of them are actually dead. They're the victims of drugs, parasites, and cultural beliefs. But with global warming melting the ice caps, releasing all sorts of viruses not seen for millions of years, and fungi evolving to adapt to warmer climates, the zombie apocalypse might be a bigger threat than we realize. Sure, the world might end, but so will the 9-to-5 rat race, traffic dams, the Kardashians, and a barrage of social media invites from people you have no interest in reconnecting with. So, I think time is right for an apocalypse. Whenever life's really stressful, I'm like, it'd be kind of fun to just, be out in the woods, shooting zombies. But then I realized, no, it wouldn't. That'd be about fun for like 3 days, and then you'd be like, fuck this, I want to go back to my desk. Thank you very much. And thank you for listening.